when you... Nope, we don't need to do this again. You know exactly what time it is. You thought a tribute to an entire franchise was enough? Well, no. I dealt with the soundtrack, then the ruins, and now we're returning to the golden age to take a look at Skylanders Giants and why it's incredible. Skylanders Giants is the second game in the hexad of Skylander games. Spyro's Adventure may have begun the series, but Giants catapulted this series into the media that they never could have expected. This game is truly what brought Skylanders into the limelight, and in my humble opinion, it is the best in the entire series. While I may be able to rant for nearly an hour about how great Superchargers is, no other game can really compare to Giants. So what makes it good? Well, just give me 20-ish minutes of your time, and you will find out. So, of course, I will discuss why this game is, well, a good game, but I also plan on showing why it's a great sequel. If you recall from my original tribute video, I trashed on Imaginators being a bad game and a sequel. I basically took a page out of Schaefer's Productions book and really honed in on what makes it a bad sequel. It expanded the universe in idiotic ways that very loosely connected to the series at all, and overall the effects of this game were so small that it wasn't even really justified in happening in the first place. It introduces its new stuff out of nowhere. It practically just ignores the other games, really, and it had little to no story, let alone a compelling one. So if you are curious how it fails from a game in general standpoint, you can check out that Exploring the Ruins video I made. But basically, a good sequel expands the universe established in new ways, continues the story in compelling ones, continuing and growing past themes and elements, and leaving an impact on the series. One horrid example of this being Swap Force, actually. It follows Giants, and even though I genuinely love the weird and stupid direction it goes in, it is so horribly disconnected from Giants that it's laughable. They ditch most previous characters, establish completely different themes and plot points, and leave only the slightest impact on the series. It has such wildly bonkers stories and premises that it is made an incredible standalone title, but not a sequel. Although I will say graphics, gameplay, all of that really improved. However, a great example for a video game sequel would be Ori and the Will of the Wisps. The game takes everything from the original, the gameplay, story, themes, characters, and cranks it all up to 11. Introducing so many new elements that make sense in context, a logical starting point transitioning us into a new area, and overall the theme and story that ties together. So, with all of this set in stone, here we go. So, to catch us up to speed, Spyro quit his job in his original game series to join the Skylanders, this group of evil fighting superheroes from another planet. And in the first game of this series, their core of light, this thing keeping away all the darkness, is broken by chaos. And then with help from us, the Portal Masters, we collect pieces of this core of light, scattered all across their planet called Skylands. And then once we've gathered all these pieces, we travel to Chaos's lair and defeat him, sending him all the way back to Earth. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, I literally just told you, why the hell are you asking that? A bad sequel would ignore all of this and say, well, it just changed off screen, but this is not the case in Giants. It starts off with Chaos and the Skylanders on Earth, which is something that was established in the first game. He then is able to travel back to Skylands, and then the actual game ensues. So basically what I'm saying is this game's entire plot up to this point is completely set up by the first game. No other game had the balls to do this. Many of the same characters remain, continuing their little stories, and all of the previous Skylanders integrated into this game got cool upgrades and perks. Overall, the game seemed like a perfect sequel right off the bat, and, well, that it was. But it's not only a good sequel, it's also just a good game, and this is the part where I get to continue my incredible ability to randomly fanboy over the plot in video games. So, the last game ended with Chaos on Earth, so this game starts with Chaos coming back to Skylands through the portals on that very planet. We see him later falling straight out of the sky with this electric infection of sorts because he's a portal master using their own portals. And because of this, he accidentally activates an old Archean robot and uses this to get away and start his new evil plan. This all happens right in front of this old hermit who Eon sends us to find, but not without the Giants, baby, because they are back. Because yes. Alright, I'll be honest, the game just kind of glosses over how and why they come back. But you know what, I'm willing to let it slide because at least this game gives them a little bit of a backstory to who the heck they even are. All Imaginators did was just say that Stealth Elf knew them. Who the heck are these guys? So we take Flynn's ship, grab some extra parts, and then the Hermit, only to head off to Cutthroat Carnival to fix up some damages. Quick reminder that Flynn still owes this guy 5 gold. And actually, now that I think about it, do you think Blobbers ever got a ride off of this island? Next, they travel to the Glacier Gully to unglaciify a big robot so they can enter the Vault of Secrets. I think these levels I've covered are a great example of how this game pretty seamlessly creates more levels out of nowhere. Like, it throws new story points in so they can make more levels, but it actually works pretty well. Like, instead of just going, oh, the key to this place is locked in this level, hundreds of miles away from the other level, but the key to that level is in this other level that has key to another level that... No, it doesn't do that. Instead, they need this level as an introduction to characters and environment. And then they need this level to get the Hermit for the story and robot. Then they need this level to learn about Skystones. Alright, fine, yeah, that's a bit useless, but the music is great in this one, so shut the f. And then they need this level to get the robot, which is required to enter the not-so-secret Vault of Secrets, which we are only trying to get because Chaos wants there first, but uh-oh. Chaos, yeah, he breaks the map before we can even get there, so he has to use his equipment to find it in the memory of Glumshanks. So with this, we try to get to his home, but our ship gets attacked again, so we detour to the Willikin village. It's not actually too important, we just get our ship fixed, meet the Chompy Mage, and these terrifying yet iconic little dummies. And then we crack down on Chaos's home security. Jesus! We then break into his palace, but he escapes, and we just fight this guy instead. Okay, I'm sorry, this is my first real complaint. And it's that this level is not that good. Like, this level absolutely could have and should have ended on a much better and more impactful fight. Maybe one that actually got us information rather than giving us nothing, and then revealing that Callie just learned it off screen. Anyways, we get attacked again, but finally grow the brains to attack them back, which is an entire level. We then learn that Chaos actually plans to drill down into the Lost City, and of course to do that he needs this drill bot is our machine. But we defeat this drill bot, and Chaos needs to find another way. So after helping Barnsey in his village, he helps us find the Oracle that makes us do some big trial thingy, leading us to find the location of the Lost City. So our gang and Chaos are all heading there at the same time, basically in this big race. Chaos gets there first, because of course, why wouldn't he? I'm just kidding. I mean, not that he makes it there first. He does actually make it there first. But what I'm saying is that it makes his story way better so that he can actually have some control over the Lost City before we get there. And you will learn why in just a second. But before that, I just want to say that I love this line way too much.
Wow! This place is enormous!
And it's huge!
Anyways, we make it to the Lost City of Arcus after this really cool scene where we're flying through the collapsing entrance. And then we have to try and make it through the entire Lost City, which is riddled with traps and enemies laid there by Chaos. See, that's why it's a good idea to get him there first, so then he's kind of taking over the place with all these enemies, and it actually makes sense. Anyways, we blast right through all of these enemies looking for Chaos, and then we found him.
Behold, it is I, Chaos, and as you can see, I am awesome!
This is what made Chaos arriving first better, even though a fight for power would have been cool and could have opened up possibilities for more unique fights. This is still really cool, with the whole fake-out Avalanche defeat and the big Archeans fighting in the back. And this leads finally to Chaos's demise, seeing him crying to his mom, setting up a sequel flawlessly. What makes this story so good is it's consistent and fun. What else do you want? Compare this to Imaginators, which just throws random location and fight after random location and fight at us. It also sets up Superchargers better than either of the two games that follow it. In Giants, he has to claw his way out of Earth only to fail on the cusp of becoming an Emperor, by the end having to run helplessly all the way home. Compare this to Superchargers, where he starts off as the literal overlord of the planet, only to have all of his power and stuff stripped away for the better of Skylands. Well, mostly himself, but also Skylands too. And with this, I would say that it obviously continued off the last game amazingly, left quite the impact, and set up the next games pretty well. So with this, we can check off one box, the story. And now we have two more aspects to cover, like the characters. Characters were quite the chapter of my Exploring the Ruins video, as I ranted about interesting characteristics of every person I could think of. And in Giants, it only gets better. And I mean, who better to start with than Callie, baby? In both Superchargers and Imaginators cases, I continuously complain about how little they used Callie, and while Giants doesn't really give her a proper story or anything, they do actually use her in the game. She gives quests, missions, advice, and fun conversations with Flynn. And speaking of Flynn, his enthusiasm with his ship is hilarious, and it only aids his overall cocky personality. His interactions with a lot of characters are pretty good. One such character being Brock. He was a surprise and strange inclusion, but it sure worked. He talks and interacts just about as much as he needs to and doesn't overstay his welcome at all. I also found some characters like that Hermit and the Oracle pretty fun, with the Oracle in particular being quite interesting and well written. However, finishing off the main trio, of course, is Hugo. He's not in this game. And I'm actually kind of happy with that. The fact that they didn't use him in this game or the next really gave them the chance to figure out what they wanted to do with this character outside of having him be the funny, smart guy that's scared of sheep. However, a nice temporary replacement for him was that machine ghost. This little guy pops into the game seamlessly, contributes to the story, gives us a fun little level, and freaking dies for us. This scene had Teeny Will crying for hours. Anyways, blah 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 blah. Who cares about those characters? We are all here for the villains. Conquertron is apparently the name of Chaos's robot and is quite an interesting villain. I like the setup for the first level with him, but after that he just becomes Chaos's puppet. Like, it's the previous conqueror of the planet, and after getting smacked up a few times by the Skylanders, he just becomes Chaos's taxi. Like, they had a pretty interesting concept on their hands, so the dynamic could have been similar to Chaos in the Darkness from Superchargers. It actually could have worked here. Although the whole destroying the world and being Supreme Overlords thing wouldn't have worked so well, so that would have to change, along with their motives and stuff. So, you know what, I guess I actually don't have much to complain about what we got, but still, they could have actually played off some chemistry between the two, which could have led to unique levels. Like, think about the fun ending this game already has, but instead there's a team up between us and Chaos, because the Conqueror betrayed him or something, leading to some unique action, like us and Chaos joining forces, and then the robots colliding, creating cool visuals. And all of this would lead to Chaos winning, which in turn would lead to the actual finale where he betrays us because he's Chaos. And you know what? Speaking of which, I love that they just made him him. Like, they never tone down the blatant evil stupidity, and if anything, crank it to 11. They don't make him redeemable, they just make him an evil punching bag, and that is exactly what this game needs. Of course, in Superchargers, this is not the case, but that's because that is a game where he has gone through lots of changes and losses, such as the near loss of Glumshanks multiple times. In Giants, he hasn't lost as much, he hasn't gone through change, so making him this just tiny guy is so much fun. Another tiny guy that's not quite as fun is the Chompy Mage. This guy didn't have to be here in the slightest, and had absolutely no motives. You know what, he was a better villain in Trap Team, but he was a fun inclusion nonetheless, even though it was kind of dumb to shove him in the Willikin village, of all places. Oh, and you know what? The Willikins are actually just as cute as they are terrifying. What? Who else is there? Oh, right. Drillbot is in this game, and he is the perfect video game villain. Maybe a stretch? Nope. My one big critique is that this game doesn't use Glumshanks at all. They really only use him for that opening scene and getting him into Arceus. He's really just the dumb sidekick for the entire time. And anyways, yada yada yada, we defeat Chaos and he crashes so hard into the mountain that he goes crying to his mom. The end. But these aren't the only characters in the game. The Skylanders are also here. The Giants are really cool. Their names aren't the best, but that's really a trend with every Skylander. They have great designs, unique abilities, and an undeniable impact on the gameplay. They are fun to use no matter what game you play and add so much. I love their little backstories too. It isn't overused, but it also isn't quite as big of a backstory as I wish we could have gotten. Like, the fact that they've been gone for millions of years could have been expanded upon in levels with certain areas and collectibles adding to the story, but hey, what we got is perfectly fine. And overall, the pricing for this game is great when it comes to these guys. You do not need them to complete the game, and all you need is the starter pack to really explore the game. And it's really nice that this game didn't lean so much on depriving you of your hard-earned money like some games did. And so all I've got to say is they did a really good job with the main characters, the villains, and Skylanders. Even the Series 2 characters were, I think, pretty well improved upon, whether that be their powers, their designs, or just overall feel. And so in yet another category, Giants has well surpassed Imaginators. So let's move on to the gameplay. Alright, this is the section I kind of neglected to shine a proper light on in my Superchargers and Imaginators review, but this is the section regarding the gameplay. Now yes, I did cover the levels and gimmicks in those reviews, but I never covered the puzzles, controls, action, boss fights, upgrades, etc. So the levels, let's start with this. As I mentioned earlier, every level genuinely feels like it has a purpose. Granted, you exclude Chaos's Castle, but every other level has some unique challenge and feel to them. Sure, the puzzles, like the locks and block pushing, can get old, but I feel like levels do, at the very least, give a different vibe to these challenges for each level, somewhat mitigating the blatant Control-C, Control-V. In one level, we are collecting Flint's parts and learning the controls and enemies. In another, we are melting ice, fighting in arenas, and escaping with an ice robot. And in one level, we could be switching between a dead cardboard world and a living puppet world, which was a really fun mechanic that they used pretty seamlessly. Aerial Attack was the level where our ship got completely bombarded with enemies and ships, seeing our characters honestly actually in danger for the first time in the game. And this level finds us invading the enemy ships and taking it down, and that was lots of fun. Those guns on board the ships, though, are really bad though, like these. I hate them in every game. Skystones 2 is normally a really annoying inclusion, but this being the first time they appeared meant that they had no stupid attachments, and it was actually alright. The Oracle's entire level was pretty cool and actually had interesting puzzles, a fun setup, and it worked really well as the predecessor to Auto Gyro Adventure. The level that truly showed off how to actually use the planes and robots in fun ways. Spyro's Adventure. The bonus levels too, by the way, were really fun, although some could have got a little improved on. And, of course, the bosses. Drillex, Chompy Mage, Conkertron, and Chaos. They all have unique fights and twists. However, Conkertron is literally just shoot the buttons and then he falls. But Drillex has this cool music and fight integration into it. Chompy Mage has a strange yet cool looking fight, albeit a little pointless. And Chaos is really cool. It's quite the spectacle that makes... Okay, I'm sorry, I put in my script, I'm just noting this is not, I typed in my script on accident, it's quite the specifically, this is supposed to say spectacle. It's quite the spectacle that makes use of lots of the stuff that we've learned with funny dialogue in the background as well.
You can run, but you can't hide! There we go.
The controls in this level and really the whole game are pretty smooth. However, again, I must say I hate these freaking turrets. However, where the turrets fail, the Giants succeed. They control well, but are pretty slow, but that is where nearly all of them having an attack that makes them run faster comes in pretty handy. It's also pretty nice pulling over islands, throwing boulders, and defacing public property with them, so plus 5 points for that one. And of course, it's just very satisfying walking straight over Chompies. So, at the end of it all, Skylanders Giants gameplay, levels, and stuff, while it may have unique twists, styles, and looks, are all pretty simple and standard. But man, does that work wonders for this series. And it's all of those things that truly skyrocketed this series onto another level. Skylanders is not my favorite game, and it's not even game series either. My favorite game is, well, of course, Subnautica, because it excels from a story, ambiance, and gameplay perspective. But the series of Subnautica, is not one to write home about. Even though Below Zero did exceed my expectations, it wasn't quite in the best direction. And on the other end, I love the FNAF series. It's great, unique, and very clever. But if the game isn't named FNAF 1 or VR, then it probably won't be one I'm just gonna play individually. If you exclude Imaginators, Skylanders has one of the most balanced individual to overall series quality I've ever seen in a game series. The soundtrack, the story, the gameplay, the characters, it's all solid throughout. And these are the things that have continuously inspired me to return to the computer to write another one of these videos. But I'm never gonna make another one of these ever again. Not over the original, or Trap Team, or Swap Force. This little trilogy of tributes was fun enough. And yes, I could farm views through clickbait and nostalgia, but I think what I've said sums up this series as best as I can. I won't ever not be upset by how the series ended, but I feel like it'd be worse to try and revive the series and continue from there. The series really stands out as one that can really hold up for the ages, and one that held a thriving fan base, until of course that inevitable game was released. And then there's Giants, the top-selling game of the 6, and for good reason. and it stands as what once was a beacon of hope for the series, and continues to live in our hearts to this day as one damn good game, story, adventure, and soundtrack, baby. Let's roll that outro one more time.